Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we have a new Scottish brewery, one that I've never actually visited for you on the channel before. So we're going to go to Dunfermline in Fife and visit the Brus Brewery for the first time. So this beer is called Declaration 90 Shilling and it's a Scotch ale. So essentially with the shilling system in Scotland, the higher the shilling number if you like, the higher the alcohol content of the beer and the sort of bigger the caramel and kind of roasted flavour that you would get from it. Normally I believe you would get a 60 shilling, a 70 shilling, an 80 shilling and a 90 shilling, but the 90 is the one that is equivalent to an American craft brewing of what is known as the wee heavy or the Scotch ale. So this one is essentially a wee heavy or a Scotch ale for those of you watching in America, and it's called Declaration after the Declaration of Arbroath, which is associated with Robert the Bruce, who the brewery is named after. I'll tell you a little bit more about that during the video of course, but as is usual with my beer reviews, I'll take you through a very brief history of the company, especially since this is my first review of them. But if you do want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. The brewery website's in the video description for you below, along with a link that will take you to my future reviews that I'll do from the Brus. I've got more of these beers to review for you in the near future. And please like the Facebook page for the channel and feel free to add me as a friend on Untappd if you do have a profile there. As I say, all the links are in the video description for you below. But anyway, the Brus Brewery is based in Dunfermline in Fife, as I told you before, and it was opened in 2011 by Dave Austin and Douglas Ross, the latter of whom is also associated with the Bridge of Allen brew house near Stirling. But David had been a wines and spirits manager at the famous Gleneagles Hotel for 10 years, and he also worked for the Rocco Hotel group as well. But after he'd been made redundant 3 times, he decided to go it alone and opened up the Rubens Cafe in the centre of Dunfermline back in 2009. He named it after his son in fact, but the idea behind this was to have an independent coffee shop and deli in Dunfermline. But later in 2011 he opened a wines and spirits shop next door to the cafe, but soon after opening this he realised that there were no local Dunfermline beers for him to sell in the shop. So at this point he decided to team up with Douglas Ross from the Bridge of Allen brew house next, and this was when they began to produce the De Brus series of beers, and the first one of these was produced in 2009, and this was the Blonde Ale, which you can still get today. But Dave and Douglas opened up the brewery on Canmore Street in Dunfermline in November of 2011, and this is actually a restaurant and a bar, and the microbrewery is in the basement, and it produces about 1,000 litres of beer per week, and they offer tours of the brewery as well, and the food is very good. So if you find yourself in Dunfermline, I would recommend that you go along there for a nice beer and a bite to eat. The beer is really nice, particularly on tap actually, very smooth, nice, quite flavourful ales, and the food is good, particularly the pizzas. I enjoyed the pizzas when I was in there, but really quite a nice place in Dunfermline. It's on Cranmore Street, which is I believe on the same street as the Alhambra Theatre, so do go and check it out. Quite a nice old house actually, and a very nice kind of setting for a restaurant in fact, so do go and check it out. But just to list the other beers you can get from the Brus Brewery, there's the Ancestral Ipa, the Blonde Ale, Declaration 90 Shilling, this guy here, Guardian Stout, the Nut Brown Ale, and also the Scottish Lager as well, and I believe they do have an oatmeal stout too, and they actually have a very nice raspberry cider that they brew as well. But of course, as you would guess from the name De Brus, the brewery is named after Robert the Bruce, who was the King of Scotland between 1306 and 1329, and he's famous for having secured Scotland's independence by driving out invading English forces back in about 1314. So Robert the Bruce is actually buried with his wife Elizabeth at Dunfermline Abbey, and if you go into the church, you'll see the parapet where the minister stands to give his sermon. Robert the Bruce, his casing, the marble casing that houses his body, is actually under that, and the idea was that the Scottish king was always seen as being under God. He was a representative of people under God, or the people's representative to God essentially. So it's quite a cool concept that, but they only discovered Robert the Bruce's body when they were renovating the church, and it was dug up and they determined that this was Robert the Bruce. So the body was lost for centuries and found, I believe, in the late 19th century or early 20th century. I forget exactly when it was, but there's quite a cool story there, so do go and visit that if you get the chance. But the symbol of the brewery, I'll just show you the artwork here. It is the spider, and of course Robert the Bruce is well known for having been scared of God because he killed his rival for the Scottish crown in the church, and the story goes that he went into a cave to repent, and basically there was the spider there who he kept watching spin its web, and that's why the Brus Brewery used the spider as the symbol of the brewery. But this one is quite nicely presented. As you can see, it's got the nice old purple colour on it, this one, and the declaration name refers to the Declaration of Arbroath, which was made by Robert the Bruce to the Pope, and essentially the English king had managed to convince the Pope that the Scots were being rebellious, and so Robert the Bruce was basically disowned by the Catholic Church, and that's why he lived in fear of going to hell throughout his life. And the Declaration of Arbroath was made very, very famous, and it's said to have influenced the American Constitution as well. So this is why the beer is called Declaration, and it's probably why they chose the 90 shilling, because it's a kind of very kind of pinnacle point, if you like, of Scottish history, but very nicely presented. The purple, incidentally, was a sign of wealth, so it's quite cool that they've chosen the Declaration beer to be the purple one. The purple dyes and things were usually reserved for really quite rich people back in medieval Scotland, but very nicely presented. On the side it tells you, Legend of the Brews. This beer has been created in memory of a long forgotten brewing history in the ancient capital of Scotland. Dunfermline once boasted 7 breweries, the earliest record of brewing date from the 1400s with the Munirhodis Brewery near Netherton. Among others, the Dunfermline Brewery ceased operation in 1898, marking an end to over 400 years of brewing tradition in the town. With a nod to the past, we celebrate those brave brewers with this unique beer in their honour. So, quite cool. It tells you on the side as well, golden in colour with a rich and rewarding honey and light caramel flavour. Craft microbrewed in the ancient capital of Scotland. So yeah, it should be very nice beer for us to try from Canmore Street in Dunfermline. So do go and check out the brewery like I told you, but let's get this guy open and we'll get on with the tasting here. So, not a smoky opening on it, in fact. Yeah, so as you can see, it's pouring a nice kind of dark rosewoody mahogany colour, this one. Try and get a nice head on it. You pour it a little bit aggressively. I've tried this beer on tap a few times and it really is quite a nice one. I've been looking forward to trying this one since I brought the bottle back with me. But very, very nice looking beer. So as you can see, a nice kind of rosewood mahogany colour, this one. It is actually quite clear, but I'm not sure how well you can see that simply because of the colour of the beer. If I put my fingers behind it, you would be able to see some transparency if it was a bit lighter in the room. But there's some big bubbles of carbonation sticking towards the side of the glass, and there's about a half finger of a frothy, slightly off-white head there. It's a kind of beigey tan head that's on there, and some smaller bubbles of carbonation just going up towards the bottom of the head there. But should be a very nice beer. I've tried this one on tap, and on tap it is beautiful. So it'll be interesting to see how the bottled version varies from that. But yeah, in terms of the aroma with this one, you're getting everything that you would expect of a Scotch ale. You're picking up a nice sort of brown bready characteristic. A lot of the Scottish beers have this, the traditional ones have a kind of cereally bready character, a sort of brown bread flavour to them. But you can definitely pick up the nice bready nose from this beer. As I say, some cereal characteristics too. It comes across as a kind of brown bready aroma, I should say. But there's a nice caramel and sort of biscuity sweetness coming out. A little bit toasted actually, and some kind of nutty notes mixing in with that. And if you sugar it up a little bit more, you can pick up some of the red fruity esters that you would associate with the Scotch ale style, of course, and particularly the 90 shilling. It's kind of quite figgy actually, not really any of the sharper sort of plum and raisiny esters that you can sometimes get. And it doesn't smell like candied fruits either. I find that the American Scotch ales always have this kind of Haribo candied fruit flavour to them, but the Scottish ones tend to have a more figgy flavour. But it smells very, very nice. Big bready as you would expect, big kind of brown bready notes as you would always expect from a traditional Scotch ale. Some caramel or biscuity sweetness coming out. A bit of a nutty flavour as well, and some nice figgy fruits. So without further ado, let's get stuck into this guy. So this is the Declaration 90 shilling from the Brus Brewery in Dunfermline in Scotland. Slangia. So yeah, actually does taste quite similar to what you'll get on tap in the brewery itself. And the thing I notice about all of their beers is that they are very, very smooth. That's the first thing you'll notice about them. The bready character kind of is the whole thing that underpins these beers, and it comes across as being a very nice and very smooth ale, in fact. Yeah, the bready character in this is really nice. It just blankets the middle of the tongue. So right across the middle of your palate, you're getting a nice kind of brown bready flavour in this one. And there's a bit of a kind of nutty flavour embedded into that. It's got a nice kind of nut infusion, and it's quite toasted as well. But you've got some biscuit and caramel sweetness that goes right down the middle of the palate. But overall, the mouthfeel of this beer is very, very smooth actually. One thing I should have pointed out, incidentally, the reason it's called the Brus Brewery rather than the Brus Brewery is because Robert the Bruce was actually half French and half Celtic. Celtic, of course, Scottish and Irish, but his family, I forget which side of the family it was from, more likely his father's, but the Brus family were descended from France. France and Scotland, of course, were allies against the English for centuries, and Robert the Bruce was half French and half Celtic, basically. And this was why, of course, the name de Brus was used. But as I say, very smooth and very nice kind of not quite a rye bread, but definitely a more brown bready flavour that you get from this. As I say, blankets the middle of the tongue. A bit of cereal dryness kind of builds up in that. It does have a bit of a kind of rye-ish or barley-ish flavour that just mixes in on top of that and gives you a bit of dry character in the middle of your palate, but some biscuit and caramel sweetness going right down the middle of your tongue. A good way to describe the flavour of this beer actually would be like some kind of dark cake actually. And there is a bit of a sort of nutty, as I say, a nutty and woody infused flavour in this, but around the edge of the tongue there's a little bit of earthy hop character in the very back corners of your palate. As you move towards the front of the tongue, there is a little bit of smooth grassiness in there, but there's a good bit, there's a little oily bubble comes behind the very front of your tongue, and you're getting the nice light figgy flavours coming out of this one. Yeah, definitely a nice figgy flavour coming out of this. There is a good bit of toasted character in there, both on the caramel and biscuity element in there, and also the bread as well, but the flavours blend together very well. It's nowhere near as kind of forthright on the caramel and the fruit elements as the American ones are. I always find the American versions of these beers push it just a little bit too far and make it a bit more sweet than the traditional style is actually meant to be, but this one does it really quite well. I always prefer a traditional Scotch ale to the American Scotch ales, if I'm honest, but this one is quite nice. And what I like about it, I always like a beer to have a big, especially a Scottish beer, to have a nice big bready malt base, because that's what they were supposed to have, because they were meant to be filling, and this one certainly hits the spot for me, I would say. And you'll get even more of the kind of smoothness out of this beer as you have it on tap, just because of the difference in the conditioning. The beers, this one is actually quite light-bodied. It's very light-bodied for a Scotch ale in my opinion, but if you try it on tap it becomes more mid to full-bodied, so definitely go and check out the Brus Brewery in Dunfermline if you get the chance. But as I say, in terms of the mouthfeel, this one is quite light-bodied. The carbonation is quite smooth. Yeah, and as you would expect, it is more of a malt-forward beer. As I say, that big bready mouthfeel actually maybe does push it towards the more mid-bodied category, if you like, but around the edges of the palate you're getting quite a nice wet hoppy character. In fact, it's a bit drier in the middle of the tongue, which is quite unusual, and it's that cereally character and the kind of toasted elements of the beer too that give it a little bit of dryness, but there's some juicy fruit character around the front of the tongue, and as you move further into the aftertaste there is perhaps a little bit of dryness from the hoppy character as well. So overall, to me, this is a really quite nice beer. If you want a more traditional Scotch ale, then this is definitely one to go for. As I say, if you're used to the American Scotch ales, then this is very different. This is more along the lines of what a Scotch ale should be, if that makes sense. The American ones really push forward those candied fruit flavours and the dark caramel aspects of it, but this one is more bready, which is what the style always was meant to be in the first place. But overall, it's a really quite nice beer, and I do quite enjoy this one. I do have another beer to review from them, which is the Declaration Stout, so you'll see that video appearing in the next little while, so keep an eye out for that one. That's a very nice beer as well. As I say, I've had it on tap before, but if you enjoy a traditional Scotch ale, then definitely give these guys a go. And there are other beers that you can get, particularly the brown ale I found was a very nice beer as well. So do go and check out the Brus Brewery on Canmore Street in Dunfermline. Very nice place to go if you found yourself in the town. But anyway, as always, if you have tried this beer yourself, let me know in the comment section below your own thoughts on it. Always interesting to read your comments. I hope you've enjoyed this beer review. Until the next one, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Like my Facebook page, add me as a friend on Untappd if you wished. But as I say, until the next beer review, slange you for now, and I hope you've enjoyed this one. Cheers.